If I come in here in the morning and I tell you to do something, and when I come back at night, if that thing isn't done, you get 1 demerit.
Imagine a live TV show so funny and loved.
They say hurricane! Hurricane!
That millions watched every week until one night everything went wrong. A single scene, lasting only a moment, shocked the audience into total silence. No one laughed, no one breathed, and that silence changed television history. That night, the Honeymooners stepped over a line no one expected, and the show that once felt unstoppable suddenly began to crumble.
Ralph!
What?
Don't you notice anything?
This is the scene people whispered about for decades, the moment that took the Honeymooners off the air. From the hood to Hollywood. Jackie Gleason's story began in the busy, rough, and lively streets of Brooklyn, New York. He was born there in 1916, and his childhood was far from easy. Money was always short, and his family lived in a small apartment where every dollar mattered. When Jackie was still young, his father suddenly left home and never returned. This left Jackie, his mother, and his brother to struggle on their own. His mother worked hard, sometimes taking several jobs, while Jackie spent a lot of time roaming the neighborhood, learning early how tough life could be. But Brooklyn also gave Jackie something special: entertainment. From a young age, he loved watching performers, comedians, and storytellers in local theaters. He would sneak into shows whenever he could, soaking up every joke, every gesture, and every laugh.
How are you, Mr. Harper? Ha! I got you that time!
People around him began to notice his natural charm. Even as a boy, Jackie could make a whole room laugh without trying. School did not interest him, and after his mother passed away when he was just a teenager, he had no one left to guide him. Instead of giving up, Jackie took a bold step. He left school and decided to chase a career in show business. He performed in dingy Brooklyn clubs where he watched real working-class people, bus drivers, factory workers, struggling families. He memorized their voices, their frustrations, their dreams. This would later become. Those early years shaped him into the performer the world would later love. Every joke he told, every character he created, carried a piece of the Brooklyn streets he grew up on. The loud voices, the bold personalities, the struggles.
What is Marilyn Monroe doing here? Where?
And the humor people used to survive. Later in life, when Jackie finally reached television, audiences felt that raw Brooklyn spirit in his work, as if the neighborhood itself had come back to life through him.
What I've always said, every dog has his day.
Gleason's rampant rise and the birth of Ralph Kramden. Jackie Gleason's big break came not in a sitcom but on a live variety show called Cavalcade of Stars. This show aired on the Dumont television network, and Gleason became host in July 1950, replacing Jerry Lester. On Cavalcade of Stars, Gleason performed in front of a live theater audience. The show was very much like the old vaudeville revues: singers, dancers, comedians, and sketches. Because the network, Dumont, was small, its budget was tight, but Gleason made the most of it.
I can use a simile in my professional life. When I first began in show business, I was very bad at it.
Using his creativity to build memorable characters. It was here on Cavalcade that Gleason started creating the people he would be known for. He introduced characters like Reginald Van Gleason III, a flamboyant rich man, and the poor soul, a sad pantomime-style wanderer. But his most famous character, Ralph Kramden, also came from this show. Gleason based Ralph on himself, his hopes, and his struggles growing up in Brooklyn. In 1951, as part of Cavalcade of Stars, Gleason introduced a sketch called The Honeymooners. Ralph Kramden was a loud, tough-talking bus driver who dreamed big but often failed. He had a wife, Alice, and Gleason played Ralph with a mix of bluster, frustration, and heart. Gleason didn't just act, he shaped the show too. With help from writers like Harry Crane and Joe Bigelow, he built characters that felt real, drawn from the drama and humor of everyday working-class life. This mix of comedy and truth struck a chord. Audiences loved the Kramdens because they saw themselves in their dreams and fights. His success on Dumont didn't go unnoticed. CBS offered him a much bigger salary and a chance to bring his characters, including Ralph, with him.
The thought always crosses my mind here about how close The subject we're discussing, this business of religion.
In 1952, Gleason moved to CBS and launched The Jackie Gleason Show. On his new CBS variety show, he kept doing the Honeymooners sketches, but now they were seen by more people. His lively, larger-than-life style, the yelling, the schemes, the fast pacing, made live TV feel electric. It was on this variety stage that Ralph Kramden was born, not just as a funny character, but as a symbol of working-class hopes, failures, and resilience. But Gleason's genius, his raw, unpredictable energy, would also become a problem. He refused to rehearse. He changed lines on instinct. And he never, ever held back Ralph's anger, even when audiences started to wonder if the jokes had gone too far. The Honeymooners broke every rule. No suburban houses, no perfect families, just a cramped Brooklyn apartment, a struggling bus driver, and real money problems. The minimal set, a kitchen table, basic furniture, forced the show to rely on raw dialogue instead of glamour. This working-class authenticity made it revolutionary. Working-class authenticity and the Ralph-Alice relationship. Jackie Gleason and his writers didn't play the usual TV game in the 1950s. Instead of showing a clean, perfect suburban home, the Honeymooners took place in a small, worn-down Brooklyn apartment. Ralph Kramden was a bus driver, not a white-collar man. This grounded working-class setting made the show feel real. Ralph's dreams were big, but his money was little. He was always plotting some wild get-rich-quick scheme, and Alice, his wife, was always there to talk him down. Alice wasn't a weak or silent wife either. She matched Ralph's yelling with her own sharp wit. She knew exactly when to challenge him, to push him, to make him think.
That will give you a rough idea, Ralph, of what a joy it is working around this apartment all day.
Their fights were loud and messy, but that's the point. They didn't feel like a fairy tale couple. They felt like real people, people who were annoyed, tired, hopeful, and stubborn. In many episodes, Ralph would threaten something like, "One of these days, pow, right in the kisser," a line that became famous and very typical of how combative but not truly abusive their arguments could be. Audiences roared with laughter in 1951, but by 1955, America was changing. Newspapers were running stories about domestic violence, social workers were speaking out, and slowly, some viewers began asking, was Ralph's anger still funny? But under that harsh talk, there was genuine love. After every blow-up, Ralph and Alice would calm down, apologize, and reconnect. Alice's wardrobe also spoke to her grounded life. She wore practical dresses, simple aprons, modest shoes, clothes that a working-class Brooklyn homemaker could really wear. Her fashion wasn't glamorous, it was honest, and it matched her strength and realism. Jackie Gleason and writer Harry Crane created Ralph and Alice to reflect real people. In fact, Crane helped develop the characters so Ralph wasn't just a loudmouth. He was a man with ambition, frustration, and a real emotional life.
Holidays are a double shift. Man works from sun to sun, but woman's work is never done.
The Alice Creighton, Pert Kelton backstory. Before Audrey Meadows became the well-known face of Alice Kramden, the show went through a strange and confusing period that most fans never hear about. Many people call it the casting shakeup no one saw coming, because behind the curtain, producers were struggling to keep the show steady while dealing with political fear, actor shortages, and growing pressure from the network. After Pert Kelton was suddenly removed during the Red Scare, the production team needed someone who could fill the role quickly. For a short time, they brought in Alice Creighton, an actress who had experience in New York radio and early live television. She was skilled, dependable, and comfortable with fast comedy rhythms. She was never meant to be a permanent replacement, but at that moment, the show needed someone who could stand on stage with almost no rehearsal and still keep the live sketch moving. This was also a time when the Dumont and early CBS teams didn't fully know what style the Honeymooners should have. Notes from the Television Academy archives show that several actresses were tested quietly, sometimes for only one rehearsal or even a single broadcast. Alice Creighton stepped in during this messy period when scripts were being rewritten at the last minute, and the network still hadn't chosen a long-term actress. Creighton performed her lines well, but she didn't have the sharp timing or grounded strength needed to match Jackie Gleason's big, unpredictable energy. Ralph Kramden was loud and dramatic. Alice needed to be firm enough to balance him, not fade beside him. Creighton, like others tested, simply didn't create that spark. This unstable moment nearly caused the entire project to collapse. But then Audrey Meadows submitted her now famous plain, unpolished photos, and everything changed. Gleason immediately recognized the perfect Alice. Alice Craden's name faded, but her brief role shows just how fragile live television once was. Silent audience incident. Bang Zoom controversy. By late 1955, something about the Honeymooners felt different inside the studio.
Bang, zoom.
Ralph Kramden's famous line, "Bang Zoom, straight to the moon," had once guaranteed a roar from the crowd. For years, it played as exaggerated, cartoonish bluster, part of the push and pull that defined Ralph and Alice's marriage. But as the year went on, the reaction to that line grew less predictable. Some nights, the audience still burst into laughter, just as they always had. Other nights, the laughs came more slowly, or faded sooner than before. A few moments even passed in uncomfortable quiet, not because of a single dramatic incident, but because the cultural mood was shifting around the show. Newspapers at the time had begun questioning old comedic habits, especially jokes built around marital conflict.
I explained to the cops how I got the money, and they let me go. So what did I do? What did I do?
Discussions about family life, respect in relationships, and the boundaries of humor were becoming more common. What once felt like a harmless exaggeration suddenly looked different to some viewers. Sponsors noticed this change too. Companies investing in the program preferred safe, uncomplicated family comedy, and they quietly began expressing concern about Ralph's temper.
Starting right in with the insults. No warming up in a bullpen or nothing, huh? Starting right in.
Even though Gleason always intended the character's threats to be symbolic, never literal.
No, Mrs. Schwartz, this is a house phone. You can't get Jersey on it.
Gleason felt all this pressure more than he ever admitted publicly. Writers suggested softening Ralph's outbursts, reshaping him into something gentler, but Gleason resisted. He believed the honesty of the characters' working-class frustrations, messy arguments, and all was the heart of the show. Yet he also understood that the landscape around him was moving. What had made the series feel groundbreaking was now becoming a risk in a changing cultural climate. By early 1956, that tension between creative authenticity and shifting expectations was one of the forces steering the series toward its end. The abrupt end and behind-the-scenes fallout. The end of The Honeymooners came much faster than most people expected. After only one full season of 39 episodes in 1955 to 1956, Jackie Gleason decided not to continue the sitcom as a weekly show.
Well, the response was so terrific that we're repeating the profile.
There was no big announcement, no public farewell, and no TV special. It simply stopped. Fans were confused, as the show was still popular and critics praised it. Behind the scenes, pressure had been building for months. Jackie Gleason was famous for his talent, but he worked on instinct. He disliked long rehearsals, repeating scenes, or shooting multiple takes. His style worked for live comedy, but a weekly sitcom needed more structure.
And if you guessed for a million years, you couldn't guess what it was that happened to me today.
Gleason said the schedule exhausted him, and he didn't want to be tied to one character forever. Money was another issue. Producing a filmed sitcom cost more than his old variety show. CBS and the sponsor Buick wanted tighter control, but Gleason wanted full creative freedom. Tension grew between him, the writers, and management. Ratings were good, but the show never became #1. Gleason felt his variety show reached more viewers, so he decided to fold Honeymooners sketches into The Jackie Gleason Show. The cast felt the strain too. Audrey Meadows said Gleason's unpredictable schedule made filming stressful. Art Carney loved his role as Ed Norton, but wanted variety in his career and needed breaks for health reasons. Joyce Randolph, who played Trixie, wished the show lasted longer but understood Gleason followed his instincts. Despite the abrupt end, the fallout was calm. The cast returned to Gleason's variety shows, performing special Honeymooners sketches into the 1960s and 70s. Gleason even filmed new versions, giving the characters new life. The short run of 39 episodes helped protect the show's legacy. Art Carney especially benefited, moving into movies and theater, eventually winning an Academy Award in 1974, proving he was more than just Norton. The Alice casting conflict and Red Scare fallout. In the early Honeymooners sketches, Pert Kelton played Alice Kramden opposite Jackie Gleason. She was known for her strong delivery, quick wit, and very real presence.
Sweetheart face, you don't have to hurry. Ed called and said he might be a little late tonight.
Alice was tough, not just a sweet homemaker, but her time on the show came to a sudden end, and the reason was more political than personal. During the early 1950s, America was swept up in the Red Scare, a time when fear of communism was everywhere, especially in entertainment. Pert Kelton's name appeared in Red Channels, a publication listing suspected communist sympathizers. The suspicion came not just because of her, but also because of her husband, who was said to have political leanings that made the network nervous. When Jackie Gleason moved his show from Dumont to CBS, the network did not want to keep Kelton as Alice. They gave a public reason, saying she had health issues, including a heart problem. But behind closed doors, many believe CBS removed her because of the blacklist. Replacing her was not easy. Gleason auditioned many actresses before finding Audrey Meadows. At first, he rejected her, thinking she looked too pretty and glamorous for Alice. Meadows did not give up. She had a photographer take candid, unglamorous photos of her. When Gleason saw those pictures, he laughed and said, "That's Alice." He did not even realize it was the same woman he had rejected the day before. Meadows got the role, and her version of Alice was a little softer than Kelton's.
Now that the whole neighborhood knows that it looks like rain, what do you say we go to bed?
Even though gentler, she still had a strong personality, and her chemistry with Gleason felt just right. Kelton's departure was not just a casting change. It was a sign of how the fear and politics of that era shaped TV. The Red Scare reached into every corner of show business, and even a beloved comedy couple like Ralph and Alice was not immune. Years later, Kelton returned to Gleason's show in a touching cameo as Alice's mother. Her original performance as the first Alice remains a powerful reminder of both her talent and the difficult times she faced. Miami Comeback. After the original episodes ended, Jackie Gleason wasn't ready to let Ralph and Alice disappear. By the early 1960s, he took a huge chance. He moved his entire production to Miami Beach, negotiating a partnership with the city and turning the Miami Beach Auditorium into his new studio home. He liked the warm weather, the tax breaks, and the chance to run a show exactly the way he wanted. In 1962, he launched a new version of the Jackie Gleason Show from Miami. These episodes sometimes included new Honeymooners musicals.
Don't miss The Honeymooners, a world premiere musical based on the classic television series, only at Paper Mill Playhouse.
Complete with singing numbers and bigger sets than the original New York sketches ever had. Gleason brought back original cast members like Art Carney and Audrey Meadows for several of these special installments. Critics said the stories felt richer and more emotional because the cast had matured, and Gleason himself had grown more reflective. These Miami-era stories covered bigger adventures: Ralph and Norton joining a baseball team, visiting Europe, or entering singing contests. They were lighter, more colorful, and filmed with higher budgets. Many of these revived sketches became known later as the Lost episodes because they were stored away for years and weren't rebroadcast until the 1980s. But even with the new excitement, Miami audiences reacted differently. The original Brooklyn studio crowd had a raw, working-class energy. In Miami, the audience was older, more tourist-heavy, and less vocal. Gleason himself joked that Miami Beach crowds laughed 5 seconds too late. Their timing changed the rhythm of the show, and sometimes the emotional punch wasn't as sharp. Gleason kept pushing forward, but the spark wasn't always the same. Transition to legacy and new generations. By the early 1970s, Gleason felt the end approaching. He slowed down production, focused more on music. His orchestra albums were surprisingly popular, and he appeared in films like Smokey and the Bandit. Even as the Miami revival faded, the Honeymooners began finding a completely new life. Young viewers discovered the show when local stations started rerunning the classic 39 episodes. Families who had never seen live TV from the 1950s suddenly fell in love with Ralph, Alice, Norton, and Trixie. Critics wrote that the show's simple apartment, honest arguments, and working-class dreams felt timeless. By the 1980s and 1990s, comedy writers openly credited the Honeymooners for inspiring modern sitcoms like The Flintstones, King of Queens, and Everybody Loves Raymond. The fan base kept growing, and DVD releases of the lost episodes made Gleason's Miami years more appreciated than ever before. The disaster that supposedly ended the Honeymooners wasn't really a disaster at all. By walking away at 39 episodes, Gleason preserved the show at its peak. And that cramped Brooklyn kitchen, those loud arguments, Ralph's impossible dreams, they became timeless precisely because he knew when to stop. We hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more amazing stories.
All I have